Welcome back to the Blue Chip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. This is going to be part 2 of the Blue Chip ratio and why it is not going to be affecting our Volunteers in 2024. In the first part, we talked about Nico at quarterback in both fronts. Whole lot of veteran depth coming back right there, okay? Really, if you look at this team in 2024 compared to 2022, we have the exact same Blue Chip ratio at 46%. That's a big part of the reason that Bud Elliott said maybe they can get over that hump this time, because he sees a few differences. We're going to talk about those differences today, but just to kind of recap off of the first video, having that veteran depth, like the core of that team coming back, that's going to mean a whole lot, okay? I feel like what we did is we just kind of filled in the holes where we were a little bit weak at with this year's team. So we should be fine, but what does the second and third levels look like? We'll be talking about that today. Also, if you think back to that 2022 season, we would have won, or, at least we would have made it into the playoffs. I was about to say that we would have won the national title, but we definitely would have made it into the playoffs even after that loss to Georgia in Athens. Several factors right there. But whenever you look at the game that we lost after that versus South Carolina, we all know that South Carolina was getting our signs and our signals from Michigan because Michigan did not want to see us in the playoffs because the team was that dominant. It was that good. Nobody wanted to see us, especially in the playoffs. Even UGA, nobody wanted to see us, especially for that second time. But I think that this year we kind of learned from all the mistakes in 2022, and in 2024, we're going to be getting it corrected. But as always, y'all, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. So in part 2, we'll be starting off with the defense, because in part 1, we start off with the offense. And we already know about the front for this defensive line. Unbelievable, okay? Pass rush is going to be crazy. Stopping the run should be at an all-time high. A lot of grown men on both sides of this football returning, and there's really no different with the linebacking core. If you look at this team this season with the 46% blue chip ratio, the same as 2022, I think that this team is actually built better to, go on, make a good playoff push and win the whole thing. And linebacker is one of those positions that you can definitely see why. So if you think back to 2022, our linebacking core struggled with pass coverage. We're really good in run support, but the pass coverage was a problem. 23, I would say that maybe the pass coverage took a step forward, but the run support took a few steps back. This year, we take several steps forward in both categories, and that starts off with Keenan Pili, who is 6'3", 6'4", 240 to 250 pounds, and he is the prototype for what you want a Mike linebacker to be in today's football. He's a beast. I mean, he can do it all. Literally, if it's pass coverage, he can do that at a very high level. If it's run support, unbelievable the way that he does not get blocked. Okay, he's 25 years old. I think he's the oldest player on this team. That grown man strength is going to go a very long way with, several layers on this team. But Keenan Pili, he might be the number one guy that you talk about whenever you want to speak on, grown man strength. He has that for sure. And then also he can get after that passer. Whenever we're talking about that front, something that we'll kind of touch on throughout this whole video, but being able to just bring 4 players to get after that quarterback, that's every defensive coordinator's dream. Tim Banks is no different. Now, he does like to blitz, okay? Does he kind of switch that up because our front's going to be so much better this year? But, we probably blitzed at about 30% last year. It was somewhere in that ballpark. And I feel like we've got several linebackers that can do it. Keenan Pili is definitely going to be the front runner for that. But he's a star. He's a stud. If he's healthy, could end up being the best linebacker in the SEC. He might not be drafted first just because he's a little bit older. But as far as what he does out there on the field, he's going to be unbelievable. Now, next to him, I believe that we're going to have Arion Carter. He's about 6'1", 6'2", 240 to 245 pounds. Last season, as a true freshman, he did get a good opportunity to play, but he kind of struggled some with being a step or two too slow, just because he had gained too much weight. And now what we're seeing is he lost some of that bad weight, gained it back at some good solid weight, and he's back to, being what we saw from his high school film. He's a guy that was very highly coveted as a senior once he made the transition from more of a running back to a linebacker. Everyone in the whole country wanted him. Alabama, UGA, just to name a couple of teams that were able to beat out for Arion Carter. But now he's bigger, faster, stronger compared to last season. Expect for him to be very similar to a Keenan Pili. And again, y'all, it's all about the fit in our system. It's all about the way that these guys are getting coached, getting trained, and all that. We do a great job of that. I think that we have one of the best staffs as far as on-field development in the entire country. So those two right there, I mean, you have to go back to, I would say, and some of y'all are not going to like this, but it just is what it is. I'm going to tell you the truth. Go back to Al Wilson and Raynoch Thompson. It should be one of those types of duos this tandem should be absolutely incredible. After them, we've got a guy like Jeremiah Telander at about 6'2", 240 pounds. He actually spoke before saying, hey, look, last season I was a little bit overweight and I had to lose some, but what he did is the same thing that Arion Carter did. He lost the bad weight, regained it with some good weight, and now he's going to be able to play back at his kind of like high school speed form. That's where we want him at. But I think that last season he played very, very well. And then just to kind of go back to Arion Carter, he did get hurt throughout about halfway through last year, so he was not able to finish out that season. But some really good ones right there. I would say that with a guy like Jeremiah Telander, where his strengths will be at is going to be in run support and also rushing that passer. But I feel like, again, going back to 2022, these three linebackers will be a lot better in pass coverage than what we had then. They're a lot better athletes, and they're dogs. You know, they're physical, they're warriors. They understand how to get it done and what it takes to get it done. So just with these three, I feel like taking gigantic leaps forward compared to 2022. After that, we could talk about a guy like Caleb Perry, 6'4", 240-ish pounds. There are several things that I like about him. I would say that maybe, okay, just on paper, right, he should be the best in pass coverage out of all of our guys, an extremely high-level athlete. But there were some times on film last season that I just didn't see that ultimate effort that you would expect, especially from a linebacker in the SEC. Now, you would hope and anticipate that with the influx of youth talent that we've got in, that maybe they're pushing him to, you know, be a little bit more of that warrior, that dog that we need. If he is that, fully expect for him to take gigantic leaps forward and for him to be a guy, right? Like he could end up maybe getting more playing time than like an Arion Carter. We don't know what's going to happen between, you know, this past spring to summer ball now. But right now we're talking about four very good options. I would say that maybe we have four options better than we had in 22 and in 23. I would say that for sure we have three better options. There's no question about that. Now, on to the next player that I feel like will, you know, probably be getting a good amount of playing time. That's going to be true freshman Edwin Spillman, 6'2", about 240 pounds himself, plays sideline to sideline, prototype Mike. He can do it all. He's a dog. He gets it on a very high level. You could tell that, I mean, coming from a really good program at Lipscomb, he's a guy that should be able to get it done. I love the way he looked in the orange and white game, really throughout all the spring. Hearing a whole lot of high praises, from the coaching staff saying, listen, he's a guy that we kind of have to, get that leash a little bit tighter just because in practice situations, he might be going a little bit too hard. You'd rather try to dial a guy back than to have to get them moving forward. So I love his game. Now, the next player that I feel like would probably be neck and neck with an Edwin Spillman would be Jalen Smith. Now, Jalen Smith, coming from Grayson High School here in Georgia, I love his film. He's an extremely high-level athlete, kind of similar to, I would say, like a Caleb Perry, just not as big. He's about 6'1", 6'2", probably about 240-plus pounds. Looked to me over the spring that he had gained a little bit too much weight. Kind of the story with that whole class in 2023. They put on too much weight. They were a step slow. I just kind of feel like Jalen Smith was a little bit late to that party and adjusting and getting back to the proper size that we need. But if he has recreated his body from this past spring to summer ball now, which is coming up, y'all, by the end of this month. So we're less than a month away from that. It's right here, okay, with it's football season. If he's gotten himself right, he's going to be another really good option. So already we're seeing tremendous depth, okay? There's a huge upgrade in the depth as opposed to 2022 and in 2023. Now, the next player, as another true freshman, is going to be Jordan Burns, about 6'2", probably about 235, 240 pounds as well. He's a guy that P and I loved his high school film. We actually said, hey, he looks like he might be a better player than Edwin Spillman. Now, we know that Edwin Spillman was very impressive in the spring. Will Jordan Burns come in, for fall camp, or, he's been up here since the summer? Has he impressed enough? Has he taken those strides? Can he be what P and I thought that he would be, or anywhere close to it? If he is, this is a very, very deep room. And I also want to talk about Eli Purcell, who I believe is a transfer from Wofford, about 6'1", 6'2", 240-ish pounds. He's more of the throwback, Mike linebacker. Might not be the most athletic player from sideline to sideline, but he gets the game on a high level because he's an older player. And so he should understand what's going on with the offense is trying to do to him. So if we get into a really tight bind and we have to put him in there, I love what he could do for us. Again, y'all, very deep at this position. Huge upgrade from 2022. And next is going to be the cornerback position. This is extremely important. Going back to 2022, who was the shutdown cornerback? You really can't think of one. There was several players that stepped up in different moments in different games, but there wasn't just one true shutdown corner throughout the entire season. But this year, we're going to have two of them. Starting off over here with the sophomores, Jermod McCoy, 6'2", almost 6'3", about 205 plus pounds. Coming from Oregon State, we saw what he did versus Washington. That was one of the best receiving cores all of last season, but he did a really good job not just covering wide receivers, but tight ends. It doesn't matter if he's playing, at nickel or on the outside at cornerback. He can do it at a really high level. He's a former wide receiver. I want to say that he might have been a 4-star wide receiver, maybe a 3-star. Either way, him at cornerback is 5 stars for sure. He's going to be a lockdown guy. I think that you would have to for sure go back to like Fulmer's time to find a cornerback that's going to be as good as Jermod McCoy should be for us this season. So the other cornerback right next to him or on the other side of him is going to be Ricky Gibson. He's another one. I absolutely love him. He's about the same height, might be a little bit lighter, about 6'2", 190-ish pounds. Maybe he's gotten a little bit heavier since the spring, but we loved his film coming out of high school just because he stays on top of the routes. He can play man coverage. He can play zone coverage at a really, really high level. And he's also physical. Both of these cornerbacks, you see them very anxious to come up, get off blocks, and make tackles on the perimeter. That's huge playing in the SEC. We need guys like this. I think that, again, y'all, we take a huge step forward with our starters at this position. And then if you think about it, okay, with that front four getting the pressure, even if we blitz, whatever, if it's a obvious passing situation, if Coach Banks says, listen, I'm going to dial one up, then we're going to have very, very tight coverage, something that we've been talking about for months on this channel, playing man-to-man. Those windows will be a whole lot smaller, something that I know a lot of Volunteer fans have been asking for. We're going to get it this season for sure, especially with our starters. Now, the third cornerback, in my opinion, will probably be Jalen McMurray, who is the transfer from Temple. He's about 6 feet tall, maybe about 185 to 190 pounds. He could also play star, but he's a player that I really like his game. The one thing that I will say that he needs to get corrected is staying on top of the routes. So something that we talked about with the first two cornerbacks, something that he needs to get fixed. And the great news for us is that's a pretty easy fix. You just tell the player, hey, listen, we're going to put a very strong point of emphasis on staying on top of the routes. We don't care if you give it up underneath. That's all it takes. It's very simple. It's all about technique. It's all about fundamentals. And he will get better at that. So he's another really good option for us. Kind of, someone gets tired or, they have a malfunction, of their helmet, whatever it is. If he has to come in, I love what he can do, especially like we just talked about, if he stays on top of those routes. He's another one. He's very physical. He's going to get off blocks. He's going to come up and make tackles. And then the same thing can really be said about Jordan Matthews, who was really, he was higher rated than Ricky Gibson was coming out of high school. He's about 6'2", very long, probably about 200 pounds as well. His biggest issue, just like Jalen McMurray, is going to be staying on top of the routes. Same thing here. Put a point of emphasis on just staying on top of the routes, and he's going to be just fine. I have absolutely no doubts about that. He's a tremendous, tremendous athlete. Now, outside of that, we've got a guy like Boo Carter, who I feel like could definitely play stars, probably going to be more of a star player, but he could also play at cornerback. Then we've got Caleb Beasley, who's out right now, but I believe that he will be back at some point in fall camp, so that's great. He's the son of a coach, and hey, look, man coverage, zone coverage, he gets it at a really high level. And then also, I really like Marcus Gorey Jr. at this position. All those guys, well, maybe outside of Boo might be a shade up under 6 feet tall, but whenever you talk about Caleb Beasley and Marcus Gorey, they're 6 feet plus, and they've got really good frames. They're 6 feet, about 200 pounds, so they're also very, very physical, and they're very versatile. So I love where we're at inside of this room. Also, okay, it cannot be overstated that a guy like Christian Charles, if he's healthy, can come back. He can also give you some more depth at cornerback. And then also Christian Harrison. He's another player that I feel like could play cornerback at a really high level. Both of those two players have played at cornerback. And again, y'all, we're a lot more athletic inside of this room compared to 2022 and 2023. So that by itself, along with the much more dominant, I would say anyway, front, okay, whether that's just with our front four or if you take the second level into account with that, we're going to be able to get after the passer, and the passing windows for the opposing quarterbacks will be a whole lot smaller. So I feel great about our cornerbacks this season. And sticking with the secondary, let's talk about the star position first. I think that we will take a pretty big step forward from 2022 and 23. Whenever you look at our star back then, we had McDonald. Now this season, we're going to have Jordan Thomas, who had some issues staying healthy. This year, it sounds and feels like he's going to be able to stay healthy, but he's got that size that we want, about 6'2", 220-ish pounds, but he does a great job right there playing nickel for us, covering those slot wideouts, whatever tight ends. You're going to see a multitude of different bodies. And also, I think that that's the hardest place to play coverage at on defense, just because the whole field is in play. So you need a guy that's very versatile. They also have to help out in run support. I feel like Jordan Thomas has been a guy that has been tremendous in run support for us. We've seen that towards the end of last season. And also, I think that he's going to be a step up in pass coverage. So we look really good right there for the starter. Now behind him, it's probably going to be Boo Carter. Boo Carter, we kind of talked about him. He's probably a shade up under 6 feet tall, close to about 200 pounds, probably about 190. But he's a tremendous athlete. Okay, like we've seen him. I mean, listen, guys, forget about it. As a true freshman coming in here, and I mean, just playing like he belongs. You could just tell that the moment's not too big for him. That's one of the biggest questions, especially playing at this position, because anytime that you're out there on an island, you know, whatever, playing in the secondary, a lot of times things tend to get amplified. If a ball is caught on you, everyone's looking just at you, even if it's not man-to-man coverage. It could have been zone. It might have been somebody else's fault. Could have been a bust in coverage, whatever, but it's all on you. So I think that him, you know, not just as a star, you know, as far as the position on the field, but a star personality, a star player, period. I think that he's going to live up to all the hype. And some of the insiders have already said, hey, look, if he does get an opportunity to get out on the field, whoever, you know, he's coming in for might not get their job back. So we're really deep there. And then just like we kind of talked about before, you know, a guy like Jalen McMurray, I think that he could play star at a really high level. Marcus Gorey Jr. There's a few other names we could probably throw out there. Obviously, Christian Harrison could definitely do it. Christian Charles could also definitely do it. All those players have the length, they have the size, they have the willingness, they have the you know, athletic ability to come out and play at a really high level at star. Now it's safety. This is just for me personally. I think that the starters are going to be Kobe Thomas and John Slaughter. Now, if it's not John Slaughter starting, it could be Andre Turrentine. And Andre Turrentine actually stepped up in more situations and moments than I gave him credit for, just after kind of going back through some of the film and watching things a little bit more closely. Sometimes you will overlook it, and I'm no different. But I would say that either one, whether it's Andre Turrentine or John Slaughter, this is going to be an upgrade potentially from what we had in 22 and 23. And the reason that I say that is they're much better athletes. The biggest question for, you know, either of these safety positions is going to be, can we get things figured out? And I would say that these players have spent enough time up on campus, you know, with Coach Banks or, you know, with Coach Nez, whoever, that they know what is expected of them, and they should be able to come out and know what to do given, you know, whatever sort of a front or, you know, offensive formation that they get, right? So I think that we're going to be fine there. But as far as having tighter coverage, we all know this might be the most important position on defense for us these days, is either one of these safeties. And I think that we will be a lot tighter in coverage. We also have guys like John Slaughter, Kobe Thomas, who I feel like should be starters because they're much more of that. We're going to get off blocks. We're going to get downhill right now, fill these lanes, and they'll help you out tremendously in run support as well as in coverage. Now, one of my biggest question marks with this position that I've been pretty vocal about is if we have a guy like Will Brooks starting at safety over Kobe Thomas. This is not a knock on Will Brooks necessarily. I'm not trying to knock him because he does give his all for Tennessee every single day. But this is us talking. Let's keep it real. He's a former walk-on, and you really don't want to have a guy like that starting for you on a, you know, game in, game out, play in, play out basis versus some of these high caliber athletes in the SEC. Now, if it's a situation where we say, okay, we know that he's going to be covering someone that he can handle, or he's going to be doing a little bit more run support, I feel very comfortable with him there. But on a regular basis, I would not want to see him starting. Okay, that's just my personal opinion. Now for the offensive side of the football, let's start off with the running back position in Dylan Sampson. So explosive. He's been one of our more explosive running backs over the past couple of seasons. If you go back to 2022 and 2023, I think that he may have had the highest yards per carry average. I know for sure that he did in 2023, but he's going to be the guy this year. Can he carry that load? I think that he can because he is a dog. He runs hard. He does get behind his pads. He also can catch the football out of the backfield for sure. That's something that I feel like will be added a little bit more into this year's offense. But if you look at the offense as a whole, the offensive line is a lot better this season, I feel like, than it was in 22 or in 23. Should take a big step forward. So those run lanes will be there for all of our backs. That's huge. A lot of times it's about getting what's given to you. We are expecting, or at least I'm expecting, for us to have about 3.5 yards given to us on any given play, especially whenever you look at our passing game. It should take a big step forward. Now, the biggest question mark for me with Dylan Sampson is going to be, can he pass protect? But I think that he's going to get that figured out. We all know that that's been a point of emphasis for him since last year, okay? If he steps up there, he's going to be just fine. After him, we've got a guy like Cam Seldon, who I'm expecting to be back by the Oklahoma game. 6'2", 230 pounds, 4'2", 40. We talk so much about him. He's another one, extremely explosive. He's got more of the prototype SEC running back type of a body, but that's a good 1-2 punch with him and Dylan Sampson. So is this running back room going to be better than 23? I don't know. Okay, like it could be, it definitely could be. But I would say that if nothing else, it will be maybe a little bit more productive just because of everything else that we've already talked about. Now, behind that, I would say, and this is just me again, y'all, I would say that Peyton Lewis might be running back number 3. He's about 6'1", 225, 230 pounds. He's a track guy. He's about a 4'3", 40. Very, very similar to a Cam Seldon. If he comes in, if he steps up, then yeah, I mean, this running back room will be better than 23. I would say definitely better than 22, and it's for sure going to be a lot more productive than either one of those seasons. But outside of that, okay, because he is a true freshman, outside of that, we've got guys like Deshaun Bishop, who was looking really good in spring of last year. I think that he's looked good so far this season. I like what I saw from him in the orange and white game. He does get behind his pads. Even for a smaller back, he's a lot closer to a Dylan Sampson, but he knows how to run hard. He's tough. He's physical. Same thing with all these guys. He can catch the football out of the backfield. Pretty good in pass protection, but I would really say that Khalifa Keith at about 6'2", 230 pounds might be our best pass blocker, okay, like out of that backfield. But my biggest question mark with him was, hey, will he get behind his pads heading into spring? And he proved to us in that orange and white game that he can do that. So we've got, I would say 4, maybe 5 guys that can really get it done. So they are young, most of them, but if they can kind of come along, because running back is a position that you don't really need a ton of experience with. It's almost plug and play, right? You just get out there, you play with confidence, and you should be fine. I think that we're going to have a really good running back room this year, y'all. But let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. Now for those tight ends, this is such a big position on this team. We all know that Coach Heupel needs really good tight ends. This is by far going to be the best room that he's had since he's been up in Knoxville. And it might be one of the best that we've ever had up in Tennessee. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Starting out with a guy like Miles Kitselman at about 6'5", 6'6", 250 pounds. Coming from Alabama, I believe that he went to a JUCO before he came here. But he's a dog. We talked about that in his film. As a blocker, it's unbelievable. But he can also go out, on routes. He runs really, really nice routes. And he also makes good catches. He's got a nice wide catch radius. Will he be the starter? I don't know, but he is going to play a lot for us. The next guy that I want to talk about is going to be Holden Staes, transferring from Notre Dame. He's another older guy, right? Like we keep on talking about this grown man strength. Miles Kisserman for sure got that grown man strength. I would say that Holden Staes also has it at about 6'5", 250 pounds as well. He's going to be a lot more of a route runner and a pass catcher, but I would say he might be the most balanced out of any of our tight ends because he also knows how to block coming from Notre Dame. He understands what it means to be an inline blocker. And I'll say this, for all of our tight ends, they're all going to be great at blocking because Coach Abe is a former offensive line coach. He knows how to teach the finite details of blocking. And then also our scheme kind of sets them up to get some kill shots. Some of those ends might be, coming up the field free, but guess what they're going to have? A tight end coming from across the formation to ear hole them. That's going to discourage them. That's kind of that bully ball mindset that Coach Heupel definitely has. This team's going to be a lot more physical at the point of contact everywhere, but we're also going to be a lot more athletic. So I would say that if our tight end room back in 2022 was at about a C-ish, this one is at about an A-. Okay, we haven't even got through everybody, but I think that if you look at how versatile some of the guys were, like a Princeton Fant, I would say that all these guys have a ton of Princeton Fant characteristics. But at the same time, you could look at a guy from last season like Callie Castles, who was a great pass catcher for us. We see that, okay, like his body, boxing people out. We see that with all 3 of the guys that I'm about to talk about today inside of this room. But then you could also throw in a guy like Jacob Warren, who's a wily old veteran, who knows his offense in and out. I feel like we're going to have a good combination of all of that with 3 guys. So, yeah, I would say this is for sure the best that Heupel has ever had and probably one of the better rooms that we've ever had up in Knoxville. So, Holden Staes is going to be an absolute and total stud. This could be a send-off season for him to the NFL, so expect for him to be completely and totally locked in. The next player is going to be Ethan Davis. Can he stay healthy? If he does, yeah, it's 6'5", 250 pounds himself, wide catch radius. He's going to be the biggest wide receiver threat from the tight end position. I love what he brings to the table. He's got to be, like a 4 or 5 type of a guy. And I mean, he can high point the ball, very wide catch radius, just like everyone else. But the biggest question for him was, can he be physical enough, at the point of contact and blocking? Well, what I saw from him last season is it looked like he was, but also this year, we're seeing him taking those steps forward. And we held him out of the orange and white game just to keep him healthy. But That right there is three very, very good tight ends. And we have not even talked about Charlie Browder, who's 6'6", 250, 260 pounds. He's looked great as well. Some of the outsiders, outside of Tennessee football have talked about him, said, man, look, his film kind of popped to us. He looks like he's going to be a guy. So he could be back for us next year, but I love that. This room is very, very deep. And then also Cole Harrison, as a true freshman, probably will not be playing for us this year, but maybe in some mop-up duty, if he's gained the weight, if he's gotten stronger, or, if he's gotten strong enough, then yeah, he will get out there. He will get some good, experience out here in the SEC. So that would be huge. But yeah, this group right here for sure, so far ahead of where 2022 was. So this one right here could maybe be the one that you circle and say, okay, this could be the position group that really separates 2022 from 2023. And last but certainly not least, the wide receiver position. We all know how critical this is to a Josh Heupel offense. And after 2022, a lot of the experts were saying, well, we think that Tennessee is going to take a step back because the wide receiver production is leaving them. We got guys like Jalen Hyatt leaving. We got Cedric Tillman leaving, so on and so forth. And there was actually a lot of truth to that in 2023. We saw that we did take a few steps back. Now, the first guy that we're going to talk about, Dante Thornton, was supposed to be able to come in and immediately just kind of take over where a couple of those players left off at. Keep in mind, too, that Cedric Tillman was hurt for most of that year. But a guy like Dante Thornton, 6'5", about 220 pounds, running 24 miles an hour, whatever it is, it's just a ridiculous number. He's a crazy athlete. Once he first got here, I think that the lights in the SEC might have been a little bit too bright for him, but now he's gotten adjusted to that. We've seen that. I mean, he looks really, really good. And we actually kind of saw that towards the end of last year, right before he got hurt. But he's a guy that I'm definitely expecting in a potential send-off season for him to have a huge breakout year and to give us a lot more of what we saw at the end of 2023. Now, what we're talking about here is a guy that's tall, that's long, that's fast. That's a mismatch nightmare. We've got a couple more players that we'll be talking about here. The next one's going to be Brew McCoy. He's been around for a while. We all know that he's a dog, okay? He can go out, he can block on the outside, but he makes those tough catches. Coach Pope has done a great job of emphasizing that with our wide receivers because we all know that UGA is going to mug us, and it's probably not going to be getting called. So you've got to find a way to make those really tough catches, those really physical catches. But I would say that Brew McCoy is the poster boy for doing that with this team. I feel like a guy like Dante Thornton can do it also. I feel like he should be very good at blocking. He looked really good doing that last year as well. But having Brew back, again, in a send-off season is going to be huge. Expect for him to show up, show out. I hope that we can get the football to him a lot early and often because he's that tone setter. Like we know what he did in that Alabama game that we won in 2022. It was a great pass. Okay, it was put in a really good spot. But you need a dog that will go up and make that catch for you in a very critical moment. And we know for sure that he will. No one deserves to go on, I feel like, to the NFL and have a whole bunch of success, maybe more than a Brew McCoy. So the next player that I want to talk about is going to be Squirrel White playing at the slot position. He's a smaller guy, but he's got a whole lot of heart. He's a dog. We've seen him make several tough catches. The one thing that I will say, I probably will keep on echoing the same sentiment throughout this whole wide receiver core is it reminds me a lot of the Falcons back in the 2000s with Roddy White, Julio Jones, Harry Douglas, that whole bunch, right? Guys that are playing wide receiver, but they're dogs. They're not really like divas and all that. We don't have none of those divas. We got a wide receiver core full of dogs, and that's huge to go along with everything else that we have. But Squirrel White, smaller guy, but it makes no difference. He is going to play like a dog, very fast, very sudden. He was our best wide receiver last year. Expect for him in another send-off season to perform very, very well. Now, after that, let's talk about the transfer, Chris Brazzell, okay? He is from Tulane, and he's 6'4", 6'5", probably about 210, 215 pounds. But he might have the widest catch radius, the longest arms out of any of the wide receivers inside of this room. I love what I saw from him on film. Again, like we just talked about, those, back in 2022, what we did really is we were able to out-scheme you and get guys open from that perspective. This year, you might know what we're going to do, but you won't be able to stop it because we're bigger, stronger, faster than you. That's where, I feel like now we're taking a huge leap forward over 2022 and 2023. Chris Brazzell should have a very dominant season. Will he be starting over a guy like Dante Thornton or, who's going to be starting there? I don't know, but if we didn't have both of them out on the field, that's a mismatch. That's two very tall, very long, very fast players. You have to put some coverage over the top. Once you do that, now Squirrel White and everybody else, Brew, all those other guys are getting open in the middle of the field. So I feel very good so far. After that, let's talk about Chaz Nimrod and Caleb Webb. Last year, which was kind of a down year for our wide receivers, they didn't perform the best. I would say that Chaz Nimrod might have been the most consistent, but they've looked really, really good, especially Caleb Webb throughout all of spring. I love what I've seen from him. Looks like he's ready. They're both ready to go into the NFL, and they're playing like it. So expect for them whenever they get their opportunities to step up really, really big for us. Already, y'all, this room is a lot deeper than it was in 22 or in 23. Now, I'm going to fast forward some, okay? I'm going to get to Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley. Those are two true freshmen. Mike Matthews, coming from Georgia, like he's right around my neck of the woods. He's a dog, okay? 6'2", about 195-ish pounds. But we've seen that he's scored in almost every single scrimmage or whatever that we've had since he's been up on campus. You know that he's going to produce when it counts the most. The lights will never be too bright for him. He lives and breathes for this. Same thing that I told y'all about Xander Sechrest. This is what we do down here in this area. That's just how we cut, baby. So I know that he's going to be a baller. How much does he get to play? I would say a lot. Same thing for Braylon Staley, who is a little bit bigger than Squirrel White at that slot position, but he might be, just a little bit slower, okay? It's not going to be a huge difference. I think that they're both burners. They're both dogs. And it's just not a big drop-off at any position with our wide receiver core. So for sure, again, y'all, very, very deep. A lot deeper than we've been getting credit for, even though it's the exact same blue chip ratio. It's just different. And then two, I'm not going to touch on everyone, but y'all can just kind of go through the list. You can see how many more players we have. Again, y'all, very, very deep at this position group. So whenever you look at this team from top to bottom, you see all the veterans in the most critical spots, right? Guys who, even if they weren't necessarily blue chip coming out of high school, at this point, they understand SEC football, Power 5 football, whatever, that they've all played on some level, right? As far as all the veterans go, they understand what to do. They understand what to expect, and they're going to be able to get their bodies, get their minds right on a different level than any of these true freshmen that are coming in that are contributing to a lot of these other programs' blue chip ratios. So I think that in itself is going to make a huge difference. But also, if you look at the totality of the way that this team is built, on the offense, we've already talked about how user-friendly it is at every single position. On the offensive line, we're going to space the whole field out, so you're facing lighter boxes. Teams have to declare what coverage they're in or, where the blitzes are coming from, all that. They've got to show you that. So that's a huge part of the battle. That's very easy for us to kind of get that part of it washed out, especially, again, with all those veterans. Then, same thing can be said about those running backs. They're going to have a wide field to kind of run on, so expect for them to step up in a huge way. Wide receivers, tight ends, same exact deal, right? There's too much. There's too much talent. There's too much depth. There's too many ways that we can beat you for teams to be able to key in on just one person. So everyone's going to get their opportunities. And then, oh, by the way, we're going up tempo. So you start to get tired. You get those lapses, you get those lapses, in mental reps. And then that's when we can still beat you just from kind of tricking you, kind of like how we did in 2022. But I think that the offense takes a huge step forward. Defense, we already know, man, like I touched on, we want to get the pressure with the front four, but if we're doing that and then we get into a third and long, well, guess what? We've got the coverage on the back end to man up, and then we can bring extra pressure, right? We can go 0 on your butts, and y'all ain't going to be able to stop it any way, shape, form, or fashion. So I think that, obviously, too, like with the linebackers stepping up, being a lot better in coverage, being a lot better in run support, safeties, cornerbacks, everyone's going to be just a lot better in really all phases of the game. So I would say that this team for sure has taken gigantic steps forward from 2022 with the same blue chip ratio. I think, y'all, that we are going to shock a whole lot of folks, and we have a really good shot to win the whole doggone thing. But let me know y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. That's it for this video. Thank y'all for sticking all the way to the end, and please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. We'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks. Peace.